Hello, YouTube. Let me bring you another installment in the continuous saga investigation of the macabre case from the Urals in 1959 of the Dyatlov Pass. And let me start briefly with introduction, and then I'll get right to it. In the winter of 1959, 9 hikers, skiers who went on a hike under the leadership of Igor Dyatlov disappeared in the mountains of the northern Urals in the Soviet Union. A month later, rescuers found their tent cut open, and within a radius of 1.5 kilometers from it, they found 5 frozen bodies. The bodies of the others were found only in May. Almost all the hikers were barefoot and half-dressed. Some had fatal injuries. It is still not solved why the young people ran away in the bitter cold and to their doom. The tragedy that occurred more than 60 years ago at the Dyatlov Pass continues to worry Russians. And I have to tell you that my investigation you will find in the link to the playlist. And I've been doing this for decades, and you can see some of my work in various televised interviews and so forth. But if you want to see how I'm putting pieces together and the sources I use, you will find them in my videos. So, special correspondents of the Komsomolskaya Pravda newspaper, well-known Russian investigative reporters Nikolai and Natalia Varsegov, have been pursuing clues in the Dyatlov Pass story for years as well. I have described some of their reports, and here is the latest. But understand that the information contained in what I'm about to tell you, they couldn't disclose before. In 1959, Yevgeny Fyodorovich Okyshev worked as a deputy head of the investigative department of the prosecutor's office of the Sverdlovsk region. He was one of the supervisors of the criminalist prosecutor Lev Ivanov, whose memoirs I recently presented in a video about this macabre case. So the Varsegovs first met with Yevgeny Fyodorovich in the year 2013. At that time, they visited him several more times. In May of 2016, they recorded his last interview for the Komsomolskaya Pravda film Dyatlov Pass, The End of the Story, directed by Alexander Abramenko. At that time, Okyshev was 96 years old and his physical health undermined by front-line wounds from World War II was getting worse. Realizing that life is running out, Yevgeny Fyodorovich frankly told the Russian journalists about those events, no longer being particularly cautious as he was in his first interviews. Here's what Okyshev told them. According to the distribution of responsibilities between the supervisor of the investigative department and me, I was entrusted with the management of the work of the criminalist prosecutor Lev Ivanov. Therefore, all the information was focused on me. In particular, we solved various difficult issues together. How did you find out about the incident in the mountains of the northern Urals? The investigator of the Ivdel prosecutor's office, Vladimir Karatayev, called our regional investigative department and reported that the skiers had disappeared in the mountains of the northern Urals. Searches were underway. The 5 corpses have been found. When the first bodies were discovered, did the hypothesis regarding death appear? At first, there were suspicions that they were killed by Mansi, the locals. But this hypothesis was cast aside when they studied the customs of the locals. They were forbidden by religious beliefs to attempt to take a person's life, and meeting people of European appearance promised good luck on the hunt. This is a brief explanation. Then there was the hypothesis about the attack of animals. You know that the tent was cut open, that they were leaving their camp in a panic, but we didn't find any traces of animals on the spot. And the hunters said that the animals in this area do not show up at all due to the fact that the ridge is constantly blown by a strong wind. They checked whether there were any escapes of prisoners. There were prison camps all around in those years. The convicts could escape and attack the tourists to take their money, clothes, to change into a prisoner's robe, which they can immediately figure out. The hypothesis also disappeared since it was not confirmed by anything. Then you, Ivanov, and your other colleagues understood that some kind of military incident could have been the cause. This was one of the hypotheses that was put forward immediately, among others. This is a deserted place, and there could only be military personnel from the nearest units. By the way, did the military take part in the search? There were great difficulties with finding victims. I contacted the commander of the convoy regiment and asked him to allocate soldiers. Was there any control over this case on the part of the Regional Communist Party Committee? Everyone then, as if under God, went under the party control. The Regional Communist Party Committee took an active part in the investigation. In my opinion, someone from the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union came, or they constantly reported on the details of the investigation by phone. I also remember that when I was about to leave for the scene of the incident, I received a call from the Prosecutor General's office and was told that our employee is urgently flying to you. Wait until you leave for that place. As far as we know, did you then request a radioactive examination? Yes, in this connection, this case was later taken away from us, and they said that there should be less talk around it. I started explaining to the relatives that it could have been an accident, as I was ordered by this comrade from the Prosecutor General's office. An accident and no talk of any murder. So I had to be evasive, telling fables to relatives, because for me and other operatives, it was known what had happened, and certainly not an ordinary accident related to the natural elements, as we told the relatives. It wasn't true. It's not true, of course. How many cases have there been in the practice of each investigator that he was forced by duty to conceal the real circumstances of the crime, either until there is clarity or the crimes are directly related to military secrecy? When you received instructions to close the case, did you and Ivanov understand that you were faced with some kind of military secret? Well, how to say it? We were the initiators of this hypothesis ourselves. And when they asked Moscow if there were any such things related, for example, to the testing of new weapons, the case was immediately taken from us. How did the relatives react? For example, one of the mothers of the victims called me a fascist. She understood that we were evading. In fact, it's very hard to tell some legend instead of the truth. This story sounds unconvincing when you know that it was far from true. Relatives wrote complaints and received answers as if on a stencil. Your children were victims of the elements. It was an accident. So it was instructed from the above. Were you ashamed then? There was an internal protest. We worked and were indignant. Together we searched for a formulation so that it sounded convincing more or less, and at the same time so that there was some hidden subtext, because we knew how it really was. Evgeny Fyodorovich, who came up with the wording that they allegedly died from circumstances of force majeure? in the resolution and determination of the criminal case. Here's what it said literally. The cause of the death of tourists was a natural force which tourists were unable to overcome. We were given a command. That is, this wording was dropped to you from the above? Yes. Explain it this way: either an accident or natural circumstances that led to the accident. And Ivanov and I came up with this formulation. Did the KGB deal with this case in parallel with you? They always had all the information about the investigation either from my hands or it was reported to the prosecutor of the region, and he informed one of them. They always had an investigative department. Soon after the completion of this case, Ivanov is sent to Kazakhstan and you were sent to Moldova. Is it somehow connected with the investigation of the death of the Dyatlov's group? I do not know who initiated this movement, but I came to Chisinau in 1960 with the following wording in the directive: to strengthen the cadre. What did happen there, in your opinion? I can only make my guesses. Apparently, these were some kind of events related to the defense of the country or the development of new types of weapons. Tourists have become accidental victims. In general, their death was connected with some secrets, because otherwise, why immediately hush up, take away cases from the prosecutors who are in the midst of the investigation, and tell them to tell lies to the relatives? Do you think this is a case that contains true information? Do you think there is a case that contains true information about the causes of death? I think so. And that criminal case, which is kept in Yekaterinburg archives, could have been cleaned up for the sake of those who hid the causes of death of 9 people. It could, of course. Moreover, in order not to violate the integrity of the case, they could replace important documents with some insignificant ones, not even relevant. So, and here's more from the Varsegovs. Such a frank interview, it turned out. Why didn't they print it right away? Because then there was a hope to get documents confirming this hypothesis in the relevant archives. And the interview could avoid other archival workers and close off the Varsegovs' access. Alas, the archives on this topic turned out to be already inaccessible. Therefore, it makes no sense to keep this interview locked up in the air. Draw conclusions from everything said by Yevgeny Okushev yourself. Yevgeny Fedorovich Okushev clearly knew what exactly happened there, but remained faithful to the secrecy of the investigation and the non-disclosure signed document until the end of his life. However, due to a deep sense of shame that has not left him since the termination of the criminal case, he gave Varsegovs direct hints about the cause of the death of 9 tourists. That's how they're referred to in Russian too, sports tourists. The Dyatlov group. He indicated in which direction the search for truth should be conducted. The Varsegovs will continue to piece together a complete picture of the incident. Meanwhile, fireballs that were flying across the sky. Let me add here something here. During the search for missing tourists in the Urals, strange phenomena occurred. Boris Sychov, a 5th-year student of the Ural Polytechnic University, in the second half of March of 1959, among other tourists, also went in search of missing comrades. One night he happened to observe something mysterious in the sky. There was a very strange case that not only me but everyone remembered, he recalled. One night, The attendants woke everyone up with a whisper. Guys, get up, get dressed, everyone go out one by one. When we came out, we saw a large fireball floating across the sky, outwardly similar to the disk of the moon, but not the moon. This ball was larger in diameter, and so it moved away from the pass, moved a little from us. We didn't observe a bright glow. Then it disappeared over the horizon. We were all perplexed. What is it? Everyone has seen this for the first time. Such phenomena were observed by local residents in January to March 1959. There's evidence of this in the criminal case, but there are no official explanations about the nature of these spheres, balls of spheres. There are only assumptions that these were missile launches from the Kapustin Yar testing site to Kamchatka. So this is the latest from the Varsegovs, but there is more, and I will bring you more interesting information from their research, from other researchers in Russia, and of course this case has definitely not been closed down in reality and continues to bring interest from people who want to find out what the truth was in 1959. Thank you for your attention to my work, and please tell others about my channel. And if you can support my research efforts, you can do so. You'll find the links in the description to this video, how to do it. And please like my videos and subscribe, and I appreciate your attention to my work.